Carolyn Dube here. What's the play for today? Well, today I'm playing around with my Strong Women stencils from over at StencilGirl Products. And you're just going to see some of the ways I've been using them. I've got several different ideas for you in here, like how to use them on old dried paint, as well as something that is difficult for me to do that really shouldn't be this hard, but it really is for me. So anyway, bunch of play with these stencils for you here today. I had this idea to dress up some plain envelopes. I need to mail some boring stuff, and I thought it'd be more fun if the envelope was a little colorful. I'm putting some speech bubbles on here. These are the masks that come with the speech bubble stencil. And then I'm going to use one of the silhouettes, but I'm going to use her in two different places. I'm just going to magically move her from one side to the other. Now, with this, I do want to tell you that this is borderline rocket science for me because I get really into it when I'm doing this and I forget to move the stencils. So I'm going to concentrate really hard here as I put the color on here. I'm using a cosmetic sponge from the drugstore, nothing fancy here, to put that acrylic paint on. And once I've got the paint all around her, she's the thing that I need to move. I need to put her onto the other side of this envelope. So once that's done, then I'm going to move her. Now you might think, hey Carolyn, that's not that hard. You just pick up the stencil and you move it to the other side. And yeah, you're right. It's not that hard. But apparently it is a struggle for me to actually remember it consistently unless I really, really focus on it. This is one of those lessons I've had to learn over and over and over again. That kind of stuff ever happen to you, or is it just me? When I was putting the silhouette of the strong woman on there, each time I intentionally put her at a little bit of an angle, made her a little more playful than if she was just perfectly straight. And I do have a speech bubble for each woman because once those get pulled off, that is where the to and from part of the address will go when I mail these envelopes. I did these as envelopes, but they just as easily could have been cards. They could have been part of a scrapbook page or in an art journal. And imagine all of the fun sayings you could put in those speech bubbles. Now this was using the masks on a plain background, that white envelope. But what about using it on something that's very colorful? Well, to me, that's where masks really shine. Let me show you what I mean. The background that I'm using here, all of that color, that is a dried paint palette. Yep, those disposable palette papers, once I'm done with them, I save them because it's paint, it's color. It'll be used somehow. And when I've got a mask, it will completely transform it because what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover up that shape where you can see it in the stencil. That's going to help me place that that mask. I use those words interchangeably. Helps me place it exactly where I want it. There's a little bit of washi tape on there to hold it in place. And then I'm going to bring in some spray paint to add some color quickly. If you don't want to use spray paint for something like this, you can absolutely just use acrylic paint to do it and sponge it on. Now, anytime I've got a colorful background, like this gel print that I have here, I will take the stencil and put it in different places on there to see where the colors look best in that shape. Like here, I love how the colors are in the cape, and then I can maneuver it so I've got one blue foot and one orange foot. You can make those subtle movements with it, know where it's going to be before you commit with the paint. So now that I know where I want that mask to go, then I'm simply going to place it in the stencil. And it helps to have a little piece of washi tape back there to hold it in place. Because once you get it where you want it, you press it down and hold that mask in place as you lift up the stencil. Because there's always a little bit of wiggling, and if you don't want that to happen, just hold the mask with one hand while you lift up that stencil. Now it's time to bring in the paint. I've got black acrylic paint that I'm using there, and the reason why I chose black was personal preference. You can do this with absolutely any color that is calling to you. I do want to have a crisp look, crisp lines to the stencil, so there are a couple of things I'm doing to help myself get that. One of them is I'm using a thick paint, a heavy body paint. That makes a big difference. The other thing is I'm pouncing in an up and down motion around that stencil. And then the third thing that I'm doing is using a small amount of paint on the sponge. And that's why I'm pouncing a little bit of it off every time I load it up over there on the paint palette. Now this is probably not going to surprise you that if you use less paint, that means you might have to go over some areas where the paint is a little thinner. And so that's what I'm doing here at the end, is just touching up anywhere where the paint feels like it's a little bit thin. Then, once you've got all the paint on there that you want, all you do is lift up that mask. Next, I'm going to play around with one of the masks in an art journal. Now, between you and me, I'm not in love with that background. But what I do know from experience is that if I put a mask on that background, suddenly that one that I'm not in love with will become a favorite. If you've got an eagle eye, you might have noticed I didn't use any of the washi tape circles to hold that mask in place. I'm simply just holding it where it is with my hand. Sometimes when I'm doing this, yeah, it will move, it will wiggle. When that happens, I simply put it back in its place and keep on stenciling. Now, if I was a wise and patient person, I would absolutely grab that piece of washi tape. But that doesn't describe me most days, so I'm just going to live on the edge and go for the adventure and stencil this without that tape on there. I could put the black paint over the entire page here, but I'm just going to put it over half of it, and you'll see how that plays together when I add the next layer. Now that I've got her on this background, suddenly I'm really starting to like it. But the next thing that I need are some words to go on this page. And so I'm going to look at the Heroic Word stencil and I'm going to pick a couple of words from it. And all of the words that I put on this stencil, they are in honor of the women that I know now and the women that came before, the shoulders that we all stand on. When I was stenciling She Is, the plan for the next set of words was using her voice. But as I was cutting this one out and looking at the stencil, I decided to go in a different direction. Oh, and by the way, the papers that I'm using here, this is just book text that I've used for cleaning up paint, using up leftover paint, that kind of thing. Those little bits, pieces, scraps make great papers to stencil some words on. Now, as much as I wanted to put 1,000 words on this stencil to be every possible strong, heroic kind of word that honors women, that many words just aren't going to fit on one stencil. So what I've done is at the bottom of this stencil, I have included the alphabet. That way, if you want to add any words, if you want to put an ending onto any of the words, say take hero and make it heroes, you've got that alphabet down there, so you have the freedom and flexibility to do that. So how on earth did I choose which words made it onto the stencil with so many possible choices? Well, I thought about what those 3 silhouettes meant, and I let them guide me because I wanted words that went with each one of those. The silhouette that I used on this art journal page, she represents the wise woman, standing there with confidence, owning all that wisdom that she's earned through all that experience. Well, what about the other 2 silhouettes on that stencil? Well, one of them represents the limitless imagination of childhood, the magic of youth. And another represents adulthood and putting on your cape to get done everything that has to be done. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, there are some days where it feels like you have to be a superhero just to get through the day. Now that I've got the last word stenciled here on this little scrap of paper, it's time to glue these down. I've trimmed up the words, I've evened it out, I've figured out the placement, and now it's just a matter of putting a little glue on there to hold them in place. What I've shared with you on how to use these stencils in this video, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many ways you can use stencils. And that's part of the reason why once I started playing with them, I never stopped. So take these words, for example. Right now, I've used them as words on this page, but you can get a completely different look with them, and I'm going to show you that in just a moment. The other thing that I think really helped me fall in love with stencils is the fact that you can't use them up. Once you've got a stencil, you'll be able to use it for years and years and years. So here you can read the words, but now let's use these same words in a different way to create a background. This time I'm going to go for something a little more illegible. I'm not really interested in being able to read the words. What I want is just the look of some broken letters, words to create the background. And to do that, all I'm doing is stenciling loosely over parts of this. I'm not actually stenciling the entire thing. And you'll notice there are some areas where you can see the pink from the paper still peeking through. That's going to give it a very broken look. And it's a quick way to create a grungy layer of imperfect words. The techniques that you've seen in this video are just a drop in the bucket of what you can do with stencils. If you want to go deeper, if you want to understand them more fully and get more use out of them, then check out my online workshop, The Joy of Stenciling. Thanks so much for joining me for today's play. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd so appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. And if you know of someone that you think would enjoy some stenciling, share this video with them so they can join in the fun too. Well, thanks so much for letting me be a part of your colorful journey.